You're watching the BU Start Now podcast with San Artina. This is your host, Sarah Ashley Neal. Our guest today is a voice coach who is all about helping you to speak passionately, precisely, and with courage. Highly sought after for her expertise in vocal performance in areas of communication and public speaking, she is passionate about building confident voices. Working in London and internationally with global companies, her client list has included HSBC, Amazon, Deloitte, and the UK's National Health Service. She also works with professionals in all sectors in addition to volunteering as a course developer and vocal coach for several leading charities. Known for empowering voices globally, let me introduce you to Sylvie Louis. Welcome to the show, Sylvie. How are you today? How are you?
I'm doing well, Sarah. I'm doing pretty well. How are you doing?
I'm all right, thank you very much. And I'm really pleased you've accepted to come onto this podcast. I always get excited at the beginning of these podcasts because I know there's so much in store and it will just flow as it flows. So rather than just throw you a big question about your background, I'm just going to tell the listeners how we met very, very briefly. A few years ago now, and we're at a London event. And I went along just to learn a little bit more about speaking on stage. And you were so confident. It was so natural. And I joined one of your classes. And talking about confidence today, there was a group of us in the room. And I just remember us feeling really outside of our comfort zones. I did. And sort of doing the scales and the umming and the not even going to pretend to do that now. And I know you're not going to put me on the spot. But do you remember that was 4 years ago? I mean, you've come on such a long way since then. But it was a fun time meeting you then back in London.
So, yeah, that was really fun. I think that was June of 2018, right before I actually started my business, because I was transitioning from teaching in schools to doing my own thing, which is what I do now. And it was fantastic meeting you there. Definitely. There were so many people. I think a lot of people just never encountered training the voice in the way that I talked about it, or even just voice training in general. Not very many people seek it out. No. And it's interesting because most people think about public speaking, and confidence obviously is a huge part of it because a lot of people are anxious, but then one element, a huge element into all of it is your voice, right? And your body. And once we got talking about it, it all just kind of made sense. Everybody did it well, all the different exercises that we had. But definitely confidence in using our voices and using our bodies. That was a great way to meet you and explore these things together.
Absolutely. Yeah. And today, listeners, we are talking about confidence and speaking, but touching on confidence, I spoke to a guest last week or the other week, and she helps people with confidence in their life and all things that are holding them back. And with speaking, and we're not just talking about public speaking today, we're talking about how we project our voice and how confident we are when we actually talk to somebody. But it's interesting because I'm wondering, in your role, do you focus on voice and communication alone, or do you actually help work out why somebody maybe isn't so confident about speaking?
Yeah, so the program is generally speaking called Voice and Communications, or sometimes it's just vocal development if there's no communication skills that are needed there. And sometimes it's about accent training as well. But all of it, the overarching umbrella is confidence in self, feeling comfortable with your own identity, how you come across, who you are, because our voices are our identity, isn't it? Like the way that we speak, how we come across. And so, yeah, we definitely dig deeper into understanding why we might have a lack of confidence in different areas, whether it may connect to a specific situation or multiple situations, or perhaps it might be related to upbringing. But there's also a very fine line between psychology, counseling therapy, and working on your voice and trying to suss out the whys of where it all came from. But when we look at voice and communications, there are very practical and actionable exercises we can do. But to understand the root of where it comes from for yourself, I don't necessarily need to know about the entire story and the nitty gritty. But if they want to share, that's fine. but it's not really about digging that deep into your past, but understanding what the the results of that happening are in the
Yeah.
physical body, how it impacts your breath, and then in turn, how we mentally and emotionally feel about our confidence and how we come across. Yeah, so those are the things that I cover.
Lovely. Well, those are the things we are going to explore in today's conversation, Sylvie. And just putting a little bit of context behind your background, you trained in Canada. Did you do most of your vocal training in Canada?
No,
Um,
actually, I moved to the UK about 7 years ago to do my Master's of Fine Art in Voice Studies. But everything, looking back in terms of what I studied, actually leads me up to that. There's
mm,
nothing about studying the wrong degree and figuring it out. But when you look backwards on it, it all just kind of makes sense and all aligns. So I started off in Canada. I'm originally from Canada, from Vancouver.
hmm.
But I studied in Waterloo, Ontario, across the country, and I did a BA in speech communication and fine and performing arts. There, I focused on intercultural communication, organizational behavior, and that type of thing. Um,
Hmm.
and then I went into the deep end and tried to discover what I wanted to do with the voice that I kind of started discovering that we could study. So I went in and went straight into acting school, actually. That was a big jump. I completely did not see it coming, did not know what I was going to learn there. But that was where I discovered voice in the whole art form itself, voice and body work movement, and how it all relates to each other. And so
Hmm.
I worked through that for about a few years, and I went into some intensive training, found my voice physically, and let go of some
Hmm.
stuff for that voice to come out. That was when I applied for the master's program, Royal Central School of Speech and Drama in London. And I didn't make it in at first, actually, because it was full. I didn't know it was full. I just thought I wasn't good enough or I was too young or something. But later that year, they admitted me. And so that's when I moved to London in September 2015. So studying that has kind of led me to do what I do. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. So that's because you're a fellow, aren't you, of the RSA now, the Royal
Yeah, yeah,
Society
yeah. I think
Arts.
that
Yeah.
was from a couple of years ago. It's very interesting the work that all the fellows do there, and being able to bridge some of the work that I do in helping others around the world, especially on a volunteer basis, and different charitable programs and things, and social
Yes.
entrepreneurship and things like that.
Yeah, I saw some of that. Maybe we'll just touch on that towards the end, as if we remember, remind me. Because yeah, I mean, literally, your CVs. I haven't got enough camera here, Sylvie, for the whole CV. I was going to touch on about the drama side of it, because I even remember. I mean, even when I was doing that workshop with you. And I'd literally clearly remember a couple of people in the room. They actually said to me, they said, you should do comedy or drama with this. And I said, well, it's funny you say that because I think there is definitely a correlation. I mean, it depends on why you're looking to seek out a voice coach and where you want to take your journey. And so I completely understand if you're on stage and you're somebody who may um, be going through that I'm not good enough bit or a bit of nerves behind them. Does it help to do maybe some acting training behind that
If
or
you are
media training?
if you're a performer, it's mandatory that you have this training for 3 years in wherever you study anyway. So
Hmm.
if somebody was going to a drama conservatoire and doing a 3 year degree, this training is embedded in the entire program.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically where I've branched off of teaching in academia and teaching in performance schools is giving people who don't have the exposure to this type of work to discover it, to explore it a little bit for themselves. Because what
Hmm.
I found was that performers and students are given this opportunity if they're studying in a performance school. But everybody who's made it through a different type of program in university or something else, or that they're just
Hmm.
a professional, they usually have the generic type of L&D training or professional development training, but a lot of it's very theoretical. So by
Hmm.
that time, that when you're only thinking about things, we're not putting them into practice. And when you're thinking about performance, everything is practical. It's like boot camp for your body to understand all these
Yes.
different things to put it together. So For performers, I mean, if you think about public speaking as a performance, yes, voice will always help. But voice will also help in smaller arenas, even if it's a one-to-one conversation, if you know where your voice is coming from. But
Yes.
also if you're thinking about a presentation, it's a little bit more presentation, a little bit more performing again, if you think about it in that aspect.
Hmm.
Then you can think about it in terms of how a performer would use voice work. But a lot of people that I've worked with also see it as just personal development in a way, for them
Yeah.
to know who they are, for them to be okay with why they want to say what they want to say, how they want to do it, and the types of people that they're speaking to, and so forth. Yeah, so it's
Yeah,
all
that
kind of
makes
like melded
sense.
together, but definitely it comes from an arts background.
Lovely. Yeah. And you touched on the voice in terms of finding your voice. And, people say, oh, it's all fluffy. We've all got a voice. I say, yeah, but sometimes we do have to find that voice. I mean, people talk about writing books, and we've all got a book inside us. And even with speaking, we've probably all got a message that we want to get out there, but we don't all, or rather, we all got a message inside of us, but we don't all need to get that message out there. We don't always all want to jump on stage. We don't all want to do a presentation,
Hmm.
etc. But even for interviews, etc., I'm sure that can help. So, could we just, for the listeners, just recap what a voice coach is? I know we're going to go into that. What would you pick up on if you were listening to people and think, oh, if I had my way, I'd give you some tips on this or some lessons on that? What would a voice coach do for somebody?
If you're strictly a voice coach only, generally speaking, the voice work is a little bit more aesthetic than applying communications training into it as well. That's what I do.
Yeah.
But if we're looking purely at a voice coach, basically a voice coach is somebody who understands the development of the voice in the body. We look at the
Hmm.
anatomy, the vocal anatomy, to see how the voice is coming out. How can it come out easier? What other types of qualities in the voice are there or are missing that we could help to enhance or to improve?
Okay.
Sometimes there's blocks in the body that are quite physical in terms of muscle tension, in terms of breathing, because breathing and voice are interrelated, and breathing will definitely impact how your voice will come out. So those are a couple of things that people will focus on the voice. So they'll look at different qualities like the pitch, the tone, the intonation, the rhythm of which how you use your voice, the musicality, the resonance,
Hmm.
where we're speaking in the body, the ease of it, projection, and things like that. Charisma as well, but that comes back into connection with yourself, right? Um,
Hmm.
Another thing that voice coaches sometimes do is accent training, but sometimes if you're really specialist in accents, you might become a dialect coach. And so for me, I'm not a dialect coach, but I can teach accents, but I only choose to teach that to professionals in understanding the general American accent and also the standard British and received pronunciation, and understanding the accents in and around London as well, and the South
Hmm.
Coast.
Yeah.
Um, so those are really the things of what a voice coach does. They help you to build the confidence in finding these things, but that's also a separate piece too, right? Because a voice coach can
Hmm.
purely just help you to improve a voice, but they don't necessarily have to help you with the confidence part of it, right? Unless they're
Yes.
holistic enough to do that together, because there could just
Hmm.
be a very, very narrow goal on getting a specific sound. But just because you
Hmm.
got the sound doesn't mean that you feel good doing it yet, because sometimes other things,
Absolutely. Yeah.
imposter syndrome and whatnot, can come up as well.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. We'll keep exploring it because it's going to keep coming up in context through the conversation. Without being too repetitive, if I said to you, what's an ideal um, confident speaker? What would they look and sound like? What would they aspire to be if they came to you to say, right, I want to be more confident as a speaker?
Well, when I hear a confident voice, it's let's look at a confident voice versus looking at a complete speaker, because there's a lot more. There's many more elements to it. So,
Hmm.
in a confident voice, what I hear is that there's a commitment and intention to what someone means to say. There's a connection to their message; they really mean it, and you can kind of hear it behind the voice. They feel
Yeah.
connected also to the audience, and that it feels like that they're really telling you the truth, and
Hmm.
everything is really there. That's what I hear in a voice. If somebody's holding back their voice a little bit, right, and they don't want to share message out there in the space with confidence and feeling all right enough to kind of let their sound just kind of come out of their mouth and let it land in the room. That's when I hear a little bit of a lack of confidence, but it doesn't mean that the message is not the truth of the person, right? Because everybody has a different personality. So
Yes.
what I look for, as well as listening to a confident voice, is to see what the body language is doing and to see if there's any giveaways in telling me that that's not what they actually mean, or is it just nerves and anxiety, right? So when I'm looking at all those things, then I take that into consideration to see what type of speaker they are, and then seeing maybe there's a couple of different things. If you improved with a couple of different exercises, then it can help them to come out a little bit more and to be seen in a specific way, to kind of get them to be the best that they can be, to help them come out of their own shell and to be seen by the audience that they're speaking to.
No, that makes sense, because we've all got different it's volumes to our voice, right? Different volume. Some people can literally stand without a microphone and project their voice to the back. Now, somebody, I know we've experienced this before, but somebody could be a good speaker, but the people at the back can't hear them. Is it to do with practice? Is it to do with the fact that they will simply just need a microphone? Or again, I guess it could be also to do with confidence if they haven't been speaking for very long. I mean, we're talking about speaking on stage at the moment. We'll stay with that theme for a moment.
Well, if they're a good speaker to begin with already, and all the different elements are in place, and they're just not heard from the back, then basically that's just vocal development and developing the voice and the body a little bit more so that it knows how to do it. Everybody can do it, unless there's some biomechanical issues or anything that is maybe perhaps health issues that might stop that from happening, right? Like if somebody had head, neck, throat cancer and that type of thing, and it really has changed the voice, then your voice will come out differently. But generally speaking, a healthy voice, a healthy regular voice that hasn't had any issues with it yet, should be able to be flexible. So vocal development helps them with their vocal flexibility in understanding how to train your voice to do different things that you want it to do. But all the other aspects of being a good speaker, that has to already be worked on, or you only have to work on vocal development at that point in time.
Yeah. And I think that comes back to the beginning when I was saying that there's, we're talking about two types of confidence here. We're talking about confidence behind even wanting to get on, confidence about getting on stage to speak. And then while you're on stage, being able to confidently talk and give your message.
Exactly. It's like honestly a whole journey, and like there's so many different steps to it, but definitely starting at the very beginning, working on that, then layering on through the entire process. Then it becomes your skill, your style, rather than trying to think about everything all at once, because that becomes way too overwhelming and we can't think and speak at the same time and be present.
No, exactly. And just staying on with the voice in terms of the volume side, over the last 20 years, I can say I've got friends who have said, I really want to go on stage to talk, but they literally do have such a silent voice. It's actually put them off doing it. But again, that can probably be sorted out with the microphone if they can actually still learn to develop their vocal expertise, surely.
Yeah, so if somebody's a little bit more quiet, it's sometimes harder to engage with them as a general audience, right? Because there needs to be engaging elements to a specific person for us to want to listen to them. They need to give us a reason why. But if somebody's more silent and holding more of their stuff to themselves, and they're not sharing as much in terms of giving it all and feeling a little bit more vulnerable and showing and exposing themselves in that way a little bit, then we're not really given a reason to know why we should listen, right? And so when that's missing, even if you amplify it with the microphone, the same qualities still exist in the voice, right? And so the other qualities still need to be developed on top of being able to be heard. So being seen and being heard, and then filling up the space with the sound, whether that be your full real voice without amplification or with a microphone for amplification. But that, honestly, vocal development for projection is literally just for sound, but everything else still needs to be there to be a good speaker, for people to want to listen, to engage, and to do something with your message afterwards, right?
Yes, you want to be able to use that, or repurpose it even. And I know people are doing more videos, and I've sort of moved into that arena. again, going back to somebody's decided that they've got the confidence now to get on stage and speak.
Mm-hmm.
They're fine about that. But they're noticing that, you know, they're talking too fast. They could be talking, you know, from the chest. They want to string a sentence together, but halfway through they're pausing, or you know, they're short of breath. Is that down to nerves, or is that down to the lack of confidence?
There's a lot of different things that could be happening for a person. They could also be thinking about what they're trying to say and thinking too much, and it's impeding on how they're actually performing and using their voice and sharing their message. There could be a lot of different things happening. I can't nail it down to one thing.
No.
Every person is different.
Mm-hmm.
But some of the things that you brought up, yeah, that's definitely some things that happen. And usually you're not calm in that state when your breath has come up so high in your body already. So if they're working with me, I definitely go back to the breath work, because I studied breath work for a while before I went into my master's in voice. And so when I focus on breath, it's not just about the box breathing. It's not about counting. It's really
Mm-hmm.
about connecting to yourself and your own understanding of how you breathe and your habits. And if you get the right guidance and understanding that in the right way for someone to work on it, they can start to track that and check into it as it's happening, and then
Mm-hmm.
start to apply some other exercises at that moment in time to come out of that, to calm themselves down a little bit and ground themselves.
Yeah, yeah. And for you, do you do meditations, or do you have a breathing practice that you do regularly? Or is it something that you're just, because you're an epitome of a great speaker anyway? You're certainly very calm, but it comes with your craft and you've learnt that. But do you have a particular practice yourself on a daily basis as well?
Me, actually, because I have to practice so much when I'm teaching my clients, that is my practice when I'm doing it. I don't actually just take up time to carve out in a day just to sit around to breathe on my own anymore, because I have to do it constantly all the time. And also, it's just so ingrained that I kind of do it all the time, unless I'm in the middle of, let's just at the gym in some type of a class or something. That's when I'm not thinking about it as much until I feel really uncomfortable. But no, I don't actually carve out like half an hour for myself to do that, but I integrate it into other elements. Like if I'm doing some yoga, I do focus
Yeah.
on the breath. If I'm doing something else, I do focus on the breath. So it's not just solely breath for me unless I'm teaching it. And then I will jump into the exercise myself to show and to also to guide the client through it. But definitely that has become my regular practice. So instead of sitting down and doing it and carving aside 20 minutes to do it, that's actually my full day practice. It's kind of more like a lifestyle type of thing that happens now and again throughout the day, rather than just doing it at the beginning or at the end of the day.
Yeah, that makes sense. Again, we're a wellness podcast,
Mm-hmm.
but you know, yes, confidence. We've talked about that's what one part of that people would look at around the wellness. In terms of how we look after ourselves, say we're out there now, we're doing our speaking. Do we have to look at our exercise regime? Do you think? Do we have to consider what we eat even before we speak? Um, you know, and do we drink tons of water? Do we throw the blueberries down? You know, which you see some speakers doing. You know, what should or we shouldn't eat before speaking on stage?
Don't drink or eat a lot of dairy before you speak, because what happens is that it starts to make your saliva and everything a little bit thicker, and you'll start to
Uh
feel
huh.
it doesn't feel very clear in the tract of the voice. Some people you'll see in performance, they might gargle some apple cider vinegar.
Okay.
And some people do that as well. But it doesn't mean it's the right thing for everybody. I mean, like if you like it and it's okay for your own health and you feel like it helps you, then you could try these things. These are all holistic things that are not, they're not drugs or anything like that. They're just really, really natural products that you could use. A lot of people do breath exercises before they begin to kind of check into themselves.
Mm-hmm.
That's what a lot of my clients do. Drinking lots of water throughout the day is important, but clearly you don't want to drink a whole load right before you go on, just in case.
No.
Always go to the washroom before you start your speeches, because a full bladder means you're holding a lot of tension inside your body as well, right? And you'll be thinking about other things. So it's really about looking at everything in a way that helps you. Um,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of habits of drinking and things like that, alcohol and caffeinated drinks are more dehydrating than anything else. So if you do
Right.
drink some of that, drink it on balance, and also hydrate a lot more with decaffeinated things. And also breathing in steam helps to warm up the voice. People also have lots of different warm up activities they can do. But when you look at what you eat and how you feel, sometimes people feel really lethargic if they've had a really big latte because there's a lot of milk in
Yes.
coffee versus drinking like a cup of tea that's mostly water, maybe with a tiny bit of milk, maybe no milk at all. You feel a lot lighter.
Hmm.
That's how I felt when I was in acting school. Was that I actually cut out a lot of the dairy coffee drinks that are really heavy because I just felt like my
Yeah.
body felt very heavy during it. But when I started
Hmm.
drinking more water based drinks, one, it helped for hydration, but two, I just felt a little bit more awake and a little bit more agile
Yeah.
with the body as well. Yeah, so these things do
Yeah.
matter. They do. You do find that they have an impact. It might not be a massive impact, but when you start to become aware of how your body starts to feel and you're more attuned to
Hmm.
that, it definitely does make a difference as well.
Well, it's all cumulative, isn't it? And this is why when I talk about creating a holistic well-being mindset generally,
Mhm.
uh, it's not about going over the top in anything. But if if you are being mindful and you are looking after yourself and doing some general exercise, having a healthier diet, then you're already in a position to just build on that, aren't you?
Hmm.
Especially going on stage. Because I heard something about, and I've done it myself, and it seems to work because I've recorded quite a few different videos for my course, and I noticed a difference. Even eating pieces of apple. Is it something to do with the acidity in the apple?
I
And to
have
actually,
no idea. I wouldn't be able to break that down for you. But
right,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Again, like you said, there's lots of different things.
Yeah, if you look into the properties of different things when you start to research it on Google and seeing why certain things are good for your voice and why certain things aren't, you'll start to see a pattern about what makes your voice feel different ways. But everybody
Hmm.
is also different, right? So
Yeah.
it just depends on how it sits with you as an individual as well. So testing out different things, but test it out like before it's actually the big talk, right? So that you know what actually works
Absolutely.
beforehand.
Yeah, not the night before when you're going on to talk to 1,000 people on stage. And they say when you talk to one person, you talk to 1,000 people anyway, which is very true if you're recording, because someone else will be able to hear that. Uh, I know you've obviously you study different languages, and you mentioned at the beginning that you don't work with dialects, and but you work across the globe, and you do work with individuals and organisations. And is it more from the point of view that people in different countries are wanting to improve their English? Is it the English that you focus on?
Yeah, when people are international expats and they have a different mother tongue or that they speak completely different languages, yeah, we only work in English. Well, sometimes I'll ask them to speak in their mother tongue to just see how the language is used differently in their bodies and to see how connected or disconnected they are. Because a lot of people find that even if they are working in really, really high up their jobs in London and they move from somewhere else, they find that there's a struggle in terms of being philosophical with the language in the same way they would be in their own
Mm,
language, and helping them
yes.
to find the confidence there. So when English becomes something that needs to be worked on, that's when I have the extra stream in my business. I have some English teachers on board helping them with leveling up their business English or professional use of language or whatever it is
Okay.
that helps them to feel more confident in using the language first. Because if that is a barrier to their confidence, working on voice and communications is a second step rather than
Hmm.
working on that first and then going to English, because you need that as a foundational step so they feel confident already
Yes.
a little bit more before they start thinking about other things because they're already still speaking in the language, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. No, I
Yeah.
completely get that, because I was thinking even in the UK, we've got so many different accents and so many different dialects. And again, it can be around confidence to whether somebody wants to stand up even in a meeting and talk. You've got someone from the north meeting someone in the south. I know very well from speaking to people to say, oh, I talk too fast. I don't understand, my northern accent or my southern accent, etc. And again, it can affect somebody's confidence, can't it? Even again, going back to wellness, if somebody's wanting to, go for a promotion, they're wanting, and they've been told you need to do more presentations in your work, or you need to have a bit more of a voice when we come together in team meetings. I've witnessed it. I've been on both sides of the table where you've looked at someone, you thought you've got so much to talk about, but they're just feeling meek and mild. But you see them in the coffee shop and absolutely fine. So again, is it coming back to especially with coming back to accents. We'll focus on accents, so I don't mislead the listeners here. It's like you said, it's the tonation, isn't it? And then sort of holding themselves back because of the lack of confidence.
Yeah, and if you're going to talk about accents, the thing is that
Yeah.
if whoever that they're speaking to does not have the exposure to their sound, their languages, their accent, then it gets frustrating for both people or whoever
Mm.
that's listening to them because they can't figure out what they're actually trying to say if there's a miscommunication. And most people
Yeah.
who don't have any training can only either slow it down or speak louder. And so that still doesn't solve the problem of not understanding a specific sound or a specific wrong syllable stress when
Hmm.
someone's speaking English. But it doesn't mean it's wrong in their accent, right? It just means that
No.
somebody doesn't understand it from that perspective. And so because our ears are not trained for it, we just don't know what to do with the information if we
Mm.
can't logically process it to understand what we need to say next. And so
Yeah.
in terms of accent about that, it depends on, I mean, when clients come to me, it's one of two things. It's either they come to me themselves or they've been sent to me, right? And sometimes people, if they're sent to me for any reason, even for voice, even for communications, even for accent, they usually don't know why yet, right? Or that there's
Okay.
already some type of a feeling because it wasn't something that they decided they wanted to do and they seeked it out themselves. And so
Hmm.
there's another layer that we need to work through for them to understand, oh, why perhaps that you're there, and understanding the real reason rather than the reason that you might think why you're there and how the process actually happened. But when people do come to me, usually it's because they know that there's something that's happening in their voice and it's not being as effective as it can be.
Hmm.
Um, but the first step that I go through is helping them to establish their own identity and be able to celebrate who they are first. And that takes sometimes a little bit of
Good.
time, right? Because when we move to a
Yeah.
new, we wonder why we can't speak them, and why can't we acclimatize? Why can't we fit in as easily or be like these people?
Mm.
But we
Mm.
all are come from different places. We're all very diverse. Places like Singapore, London, New York, so many different people come there to work, and
Mm.
it doesn't mean that
Absolutely.
you can't bring a part of yourself, right?
Yeah, yeah, and this is it with accents. They're beautiful, and in their hometown, they're even probably even more beautiful. Um, and I've heard people even wanting to say, "Oh, I wish I could change my accent." But
Hmm.
like you said, how much can you change? I mean, you touched on it. You talked about you can soften an accent, and maybe if you could slow your speaking down, and then is that when the pronunciation comes in that you help people pronounce their words so they're not their authentic self and
Well,
saying,
Well, accent training is much more complex than just pronunciation. We look at how somebody forms their consonants, the space in which they use their mouth, and how they form the sound and how the air
mhm,
comes out. We focus on all the vowels and how they're different, exactly the same way, and how different they are
right,
by the time we focus on syllable stress, syllable length, intonation, rhythm, and like everything
mm,
that you can think
syllable
of
length.
breaking down a specific accent. Um, so when people are wanting to change it, yes, their accents can change, but generally speaking, in research, you'll see that uh, anyone from the age of 14 onwards, and sometimes as young as 7 in some other studies, will say that your accent doesn't change basically after that age unless you're consciously really hard working on this accent. And it's a slow process to shift a sound. And I like to call it shifting a sound because it's not really about reducing a sound. It's really about learning a new sound and understanding what you need to do to make that sound and seeing what feels
Mm,
comfortable for you to move there. And if it feels
yeah.
comfortable and natural enough, then great, that can be your sound. But it's not about with acting, it's different because with acting, you need to take on that sound to be that character. But I
Hmm.
think as individuals, we don't necessarily need a pure accent to get into to kind of qualify as I am this and I am that because we are
No, totally.
that
I
we are,
like that.
right? So I think
Yeah.
a lot of my clients also have international accents, which is really lovely because it's a mix of different things and it really shows where they've been, what they've been influenced by. But as long as
Mm,
clarity of communication is there, I think
yeah.
I think that's mainly the key thing.
Definitely. Yeah, no, thank you for that. Because I've moved around quite a bit. I mean, I can literally say I've moved about 40 times, but that's in various locations. And when I was in the States years and years and years ago, instantly I was picking up the accent. And then I lived in Birmingham for about 15 years. and my accent comes out, and I only have to have a conversation with someone in Birmingham. And I won't even pretend to do it now because I won't insult anybody listening. But it comes out, and I grew up in Devon. But when I go out to Devon, I do occasionally say, ridiculous, isn't it? Or a few different words, and it comes out. And so, you start missing sort of, some of the letters, or I don't know all the terminology like you do, which is why I was bringing up some of those questions, because, I'm even saying pronunciation instead of pronunciation. So I'm not going to be a tutor for anyone to do any speaking, am I? I wanted to touch on you've set up a program, haven't you, called for English, an English program for refugees.
Oh yeah, English for refugees.
Would you like to share some of that while we're talking about accents? It might sort of fit in nicely, and we can go back to
sure. So in mid-March, so in my program, I right now this teacher's on leave, but I had an English teacher on my team who is Ukrainian. And she had to go evacuate her family when the war started back in the end of February. And so we were talking about how we wanted to help people, and she definitely wanted to help her own people as well. And 5 years ago, I was thinking about wanting to start a program for refugees. And there's no good time to start a program like this. There's no time to organize it, to get it right. So I started a Google form because I knew there would be more people needing to sign up than she could handle as one person to teach in a small group format. So I organized this form to kind of create a structure around people who wanted to learn. And so basically global refugees from around the world can sign up to this program. We've developed a program that's an 8-week program, 16 sessions twice a week for an hour and a half. So three hours a week, they learn English intensively with a teacher. And we've crafted the entire syllabus to include all the different topics that someone who's a new refugee in a completely different country would need, including things like how do you ask your host family certain things, understanding how do you get around the town, going to the airport and being able to buy tickets and even train tickets, and how to get around transportation, and that type of thing. So we developed that across 5 different levels of English. So beginner, we have elementary, pre-intermediate, intermediate, and upper intermediate. We don't help the really advanced level because at that point in time, they already know how to ask for what they need, type of thing. So it was mainly made for that. Since mid-March and starting this, there have been just under 1,000 refugee participants that have registered, and at least 860 of them have gone through the program now. Today is the beginning of August. So so there's been a lot of extra work on top of my business. Every week I am interviewing new volunteer teachers from around the world. As long as they're a certified English language teacher and they're the right fit, then I link them up to a group of people that are at the same level, same availability for studying time. And then they teach them the syllabus that me and the team of volunteer teachers have so kindly volunteered to help us create the program. And so, that's kind of what's going on.
Wow, no, congratulations and well done, because it's not an easy feat, is it, setting something up? And
no,
I know even in your own business, whether you're setting up a podcast, YouTube channel, whatever it is, you've got something to offer. You want to give value to people, but you still got to get it out there, haven't you? There's still got a bit of outreach, but clearly you've got a lot of people on board. Do you find that they're filtering this out? I mean, is there anything the listeners can do today?
Yeah. Sure. There's 2 aspects to the program. So one is if you're a certified English language teacher, you can definitely just send me your CV. I'll send you the links later so then you can use that. And then an interview comes through. If you are not a teacher, that's absolutely fine, which is why we started this part of the program called Conversation Partners. So if you are a native level speaker of English or an advanced level speaker of English, you can be matched 1-to-1 with a participant so that we can build more community in them, helping them with conversational practice so that they feel more feeling confident about using the language, right?
Yeah.
So that's what we have a separate stream for. Because we are so low on the volunteers for that, because we're matching them 1-to-1, so it's a lot harder than matching 15 to one person, right? We are still 400 volunteers below what we need. But we're probably going to start to phase out that part because it's continually too much work to try to find one-to-one people. So we're starting some speaking clubs for the alumni of the program so that they can continue
Good.
practicing and have some guidance there as well.
Yeah, one to one. I mean, again, well done, because that's. But it is good to see how that goes, and it's not, maybe in the future it's something you can return to. So message really gets out there. So we'll all do our best to support you
Yeah,
on that,
thank
Sylvie.
you so much. Yeah.
Yeah, no. Um, when I like speaking a little bit of Spanish, and a couple of times when I've gone to Spain for couple months, not as glam as it sounds, everyone, but I used to rent something, give it up, go off, do some travel, and write my book, and always wanted to be a local straight away, and I always found that if I actually just practice and just put myself out there, even if I didn't have the right accent, people were understanding me. And that gave me so much confidence. I haven't been away for a few years, and partly with COVID, etc. So even I'm already thinking, people say, oh, you speak Spanish. I go, ooh, ooh. And I know that's talking about language, but even then it still comes back to, in their language, pronouncing.
Mm.
Must stop saying pronouncing the words right. And again, I can get very excited. I can be very calm as well, Sylvie. You may not have seen that side of me.
It's really fun though, isn't it, when you get to practice a new language? I think the only issue comes up is like something that I've heard since being in the UK for a long time is that a lot of Brits tell me that when they go to France, the French people don't like them trying to speak French. But I grew up with French in Canada and understanding it. And I suppose because my ear is so tuned to the subtleties of the language, so then it's not like I don't feel like they probably don't think I'm trying to butcher the language either. But I hear a lot of stereotypes about also if you're trying to learn a new language, but they don't like you doing it in a certain way, that someone stops you to. And that can definitely have a negative effect on someone's confidence in trying a new language, right? But when you have a more open culture of people wanting to learn it and they appreciate it, it's so different.
It is very different, and also if you're going on a holiday and you might be in a tourist area, I know very well. I've been speaking some Spanish, and I know from experience that it's right. They literally, because I might said a few words slower, they're stopping me and saying, "Oh, can you just speak English?" And I'm like, "Oh, okay." But if I've gone through to some of the local areas, or you hook up with friends and you have that chat on the beach one night, with people, whatever, in the evenings. Then people say, just talk Spanish. We're not even talking English to you. So again, I appreciate it's slightly different, but
Again,
the language itself.
People. Yeah, it's relationships. It's honestly so much about relationships and the communication you get from them, right? Because that type of feeling that you get right away dictates how you want to use your voice next and how you want to speak next.
Yeah, and I know you specialize in executive coaching, and I appreciate that, and public speaking. But again, your individual clients, do they come to you sometimes just because they're aware that, even in relationships, our own relationships, if we are a little bit nervous about talking about a subject, we can go inwards, can't we? And it's having, again, just touching on confidence, it's having that confidence to say, well, I know my message I want to get across to you. But we still would apply the similar principles, wouldn't we? Your breath, being calm, holding yourself.
Yeah, generally people find me because they want to apply it to their work and professional lives, but everything translates over into personal as well. But I think a lot of the time people really compartmentalize professional and personal, and then it's kind of hard for them to understand what the bridging the gap is. If they're open to that and the client mentions that to me, then I'll help them understand what the parallels are. But if we keep it strictly professional, then we just keep it strictly professional. But they'll know that this can also happen with, when you hold your breath. Notice when you hold your breath with a specific member of your family. It's the same holding of breath, but maybe in a subtly in a different way, but you're still doing something, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Is there anything that you'd like I invite you to sort of discuss here today around confidence? Because, I had a million questions I wanted to ask you, but it's taken quite a nice natural sort of path.
I suppose the most important thing that always comes up for me and speaking to people about these things is our feeling that of belongingness, that we belong, that we are enough to be who we are. Yes, there's different things that we can do with our voices, but as long as they're still identifiable to who you are as a person, and that you are able to be and stay authentic to who you are, even though you're improving on different exercises for your voice, that's really the main thing. Because
Mm-hmm.
when we look outside of ourselves to want to aspire to speak like a specific, I don't know, an idol or some type of public figure,
Mm-hmm.
it's so far removed from who we are as a person that we sometimes forget who we are when we're thinking about who we want to be. And so we're
Mm-hmm.
not checking in with ourselves as much. But when we take the time to look inside to feel what our breath patterns feel like, they're not the same as this public figure. Everybody breathes differently. When we start
Right.
to understand who we are from that type of core process, that's going to tell you why you speak the way that you do, why you hold the way that you do. And
Mm-hmm.
when you spend that time there and the curiosity, that's where a lot of things will start to open up and blossom if you allow it to. And once you spend that time doing that, that's where the confidence really builds from, because you start to understand yourself a little bit more. You start to understand why this happens in relationship to when you're with a specific person, specific group
Mm-hmm.
of people, or a different group of people. And once you understand that, you have the control in your hands, because you can actually do something about it, rather than feel like I still need to speak like this person in front of them because that's going to be the answer. But that's never
Yes.
actually the answer.
No, that's nicely put. No, thank you for that. That's absolutely, because yeah, I mean, like you said, it's a different, possibly a different technique when you're actually going out on stage, because you might actually be walking the platform at the same time as well, and you're multitasking with your dry whiteboard, or you won't use that these days on stage, would you? But PowerPoints, whatever you're doing. But like you said, if you're just wanting on an everyday basis just to feel more confident with the way you present your voice, and the way you use your voice, and the message that you've got to tell people, then yeah, I think this comes in under one of the umbrellas of well-being for sure. Because I
Definitely.
think, when you articulate yourself and you've got that message out. I mean, even now, just saying that, I feel like I want to sit up straighter and just present myself to the world. We're not all me, but
That's amazing.
yeah,
I'm so glad that you feel that way.
yeah, absolutely. So, is any other takeaway that you want to give the listeners today, out of or if you've got any little tips you want to leave behind for them?
Start to write down different things about your reflections of how something went about your voice, because a lot of the time we carry so much of the negative stuff, but when you write it out, you kind of get it out of the system a little bit more. But also remember, for every one bad thing that you write down, make sure you try to find at least 2 or 3 positives for it, because we often tell ourselves things that are more negative and we keep them closer to heart than anything else. So that would
Mm.
be probably my biggest takeaway for anyone trying to look at developing their voice or starting their journey, even if it's not taking up training with someone like myself yet. But you can start doing that for yourself, and you can start building that up. And then when you are ready, then at least you know where you're coming from.
Absolutely, I love that, because going back full circle to the beginning, we talked about layering, didn't we? You can't always run before you can walk, but most of us do have a voice, or we have the ability to speak. And for those of us who do, we want to use it in the best way possible. So thank you ever so much, Sylvie, for coming on the show today. Where can people find you? We will put information in the show notes today, but
Yeah,
where can
sure.
they find you?
So my website is www.voicetraininginlondon.co.uk. It's called SLVC Voice Training in London. I'm all over LinkedIn and Instagram. LinkedIn, you can find me as Sylvie Louis, MFA FRSA. And on Instagram and also Facebook, SLVC Voice Coach. There is also an online community I have on Facebook. So if you want to gain some free tips from my
Good.
team, you can join that through the Facebook group page as well.
Brilliant. And having known you for a few years, I don't think I'm pronouncing your last name right. I think I call it Lou. Is Louis?
Yeah,
Is
Louis,
it
yeah.
Louis? You should. Goodness me! Slap wrist on the video. If you're not on video,
No,
you
it's
hear
all
that.
good. No, it's all good.
Yeah,
Everyone's
Louis.
differently.
Yeah, we got to learn, have to learn. Anyway, thank you ever so much for your time today. And
Yeah.
I know there's always more to talk about. It's just been a general chit chat today, and I hope that's given the listeners some confidence in going out there and doing some reflection on how they speak to the world. So thank you ever so much. Take care of yourself.
Thank you. All right, take
Thank you.
care. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye. And remember, our show is about helping you to create healthier habits in the life you live now until new lifestyle practices change how you live your life. Well, that's it for today's episode. Thank you for watching and taking time out to join us. If you enjoyed the show, it would be really great if you could leave a review, and I look forward to welcoming you back to the show next week. This has been your host, Sarah Ashley Neal.